in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and seek the truth with FBI whistleblower and common sense extremist Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. It's Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026, and today is going to be all about the trust issues. Why? Because I do not trust anything that I see anywhere about what is going on in Iran, and I'm just going to hold off on any sort of commentary or analysis on it until I get something that maybe I can believe. So what else can we talk about? Well, we can talk about ivermectin back on the plate. We're going to assess if it's good, if it's bad, and I guess it depends on who you're asking. The New York Times is against caring for your elderly parents. The Washington Post wants to tax charitable organizations. The California Solar Initiative wound up being a get out the vote initiative for communists, and some fake heroes are on the horizon, and we're going to weigh in on just who they are. So let's get after it. I think it's important to sort of set the groundwork here. What are the battlefield conditions? America is involved in a cold civil war. It's beyond any sort of dispute in my mind. You got two primary sides. One is conservative, libertarian leaning, traditionally American. They're the people that say things like, we all want the same thing. As long as you mow your grass, I don't really care who the candidate is the yard sign for in your front yard. We can all just get along. And the other side, the communists, are the Borg from Star Trek. They say that which not is banned is required. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. That's just an irreconcilable difference. And we're moving further and further along here. And increasingly, the temperature is getting boiled up. Now, let's take this out of the context of politics. If you're involved in a troublesome relationship, maybe you're married, maybe you're not, wherever you are at, and you are on the rocks, maybe looking like you're going to be splitting up here, could be looking at a divorce, again, back to the cold Civil War, there are trust issues that come in. Now, if you want to reconcile that, if you want to actually fight to stay together, you're going to have to overcome those trust issues. That does not mean, though, that you're going to be blind going forward. Trust, but verify. So for our purposes today, I'm going to look at the news pieces and the content that I present to you through the vein of I'm verifying. Should I trust you or should I not? So let's get to it. And let's begin with NPR, which is still out there functioning, even though they're not getting that sweet, sweet government cash. And they have a piece about ivermectin. Headline: ivermectin is making a post-pandemic comeback among cancer patients. So ivermectin fights parasitic infections. It actually won the Nobel Prize in 2015 for that. But from the piece, despite the disappointing research results, ivermectin took off during the pandemic, fueled by misinformation. So they're going back down memory lane, the memories that they've created for themselves, because people are now looking at ivermectin as a panacea in their perspective. NPR is saying, well, people are disregarding solid, sound medical advice, and they're saying, look, I don't want to go get the chemo. I've heard and read some good things about ivermectin, so I'm going to try that instead. Now, not a medical professional, not advocating on one thing or the other here. I'm definitely out of my depth on that. But I did live through 2020 and 21 and 22 and on infinitum up to present day, where trust in our medical establishments was imploding, and for good reason, because the quote unquote experts took our trust and blew it up. They were telling us things that we knew on their face were absolutely ridiculous. Walk one way down grocery store aisles because that'll stop you from getting a chest cold. Masks are good. Oh, well, they don't work. Actually, masks are good again, and you should wear two masks. Well, you don't wear the mask to protect yourself. You wear the mask to protect other people. Well, I'm sorry. If that's the case, then I should just wear the mask inside out. Shouldn't I? In fact, if I'm going to wear two masks, I should wear one mask normal and then the second mask on the outside, inside out. And then it's like other people are wearing masks, right? Makes no sense. State of Ohio told high school wrestlers that they could wrestle each other, put their faces in each other's armpits and crotches for 3 minutes, but then afterwards, don't shake hands because you got to stop the spread. Ridiculous on its face. And there's was legion in the number of examples. Those are just the things that are at the top of my head. Now we're trusting but verifying the ilk of the NPRs of the world. And they're saying things like, don't trust that ivermectin. It is, after all, a horse dewormer. They're still on that. So before I move on to some other examples from NPR, because I went back into the archives, we'll wrap this one up. It says, quote, patients are spurning medical advice and foregoing cancer treatments, putting their faith instead in ivermectin. Well, I mean, that was despite things like from the FDA. Who remembers this? Well, you have to get a link to it because it's no longer active. And I'll make sure that I put it on here on the show notes here on rumble.com/amradpod and YouTube @amradpod. And I'll even put it in the show notes over at Spotify. Again, guys, go over to Spotify if you haven't already. We really appreciate that. But this was a post on Twitter from the FDA in August 2021. And because of a lawsuit, it has now been taken down. This is just a screenshot. It says, you are not a horse. You are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it. That's the experts. Those are the government officials. Similarly, NPR, let's go back through the archives. Headline, U.S. health officials urge people not to use deworming medicine ivermectin for COVID. Another one, we got this one. Mississippi is pleading with people to stop using a livestock drug to treat COVID-19. Okay, I said it won the Nobel Prize. It didn't win the Nobel Prize for helping the horses and the cows. It's a 2015 Nobel Prize for viral infections in people. But that piece there wouldn't let you know that. They were saying that Mississippi was pleading because it was the least vaccinated state at the time. The piece comes from 2021, August. So, right around the time of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, just before actually. And that was a time when Biden, the auto pen administration, withdrew American troops finally after 20 years from Afghanistan in a terrible fashion, got 13 service members killed. And Americans were back to unity at that point, right? The Cold Civil War had gone down a little bit, and we were saying, hey, you suck, Joe Biden. You got a bunch of people killed for no reason. So then the Biden administration pivoted and said, we got to get back to that tribalism, R versus D, red versus blue. So let's put out a vaccine mandate through OSHA. That's what they did. So this piece was right around that time, and NPR was doing heavy lifting on behalf of the administration, which wanted people to inject an experimental gene juice into their arms. Trust the experts. No, I'm going to verify if it's true or not. So from this one, and it was pertinent to what we're talking about today, it says that initially, the department said that at least 70% of recent calls, this was the Mississippi Health Department, 70% of calls to the State Poison Control Center were related to people who ingested a version of the drug that is formulated to treat parasites in cows and horses. 70% of the poison hotline? 70%? No. It was 2%. But 70% of those had taken the wrong ivermectin. And they'd taken the horse one, the cow one, by accident. But that was just a correction that the experts over at the health department in Mississippi just, they put out in when they corrected the record later on when nobody was paying attention. When it was all hot and blazing, getting headlines, they said 70%, 7 in 10 people who were calling to say, I've been poisoned and I don't know what to do, they took the horse dewormer. Now, the FDA, according to NPR, at this point in 2021, FDA has not approved ivermectin to prevent or treat COVID-19, but the vaccines have been proven to reduce the risk of serious illness or death dramatically. Not true at all. There was no difference in anybody. In fact, the more you injected, the more prone you were to become infected. That rhymes. Huh, I'm doing this like a professional podcaster here, guys. If you haven't already on the podcast, give us a nice thumbs up. The more you injected, the more you got infected. That was provable. But NPR didn't want to talk about that. That was inconvenient for the narrative. Trust, but verify. So now let's go over to something else, which is related to health, as we are trusting, not really, but at least verifying whether or not we can get along if the cold civil war is ramping up or ramping down. I think that this was a interesting piece over from the New York Times, at one point a newspaper. It's an opinion piece. Headline: Dying at home is surprisingly hard. Now, it's a piece about hospice, but let's see if there's maybe a worldview difference. The cold civil war, right? One side versus the other. Can we all just get along? Do we have the same perspective on things, like taking care of our own parents as they enter their golden years? I don't think so. So the father here that is wrote about, because this is an opinion piece, he was dying of Alzheimer's a few years ago, and it's a family of doctors. Dying at home isn't easy, even with hospice care. We were responsible for bathing our father and helping him use the toilet, changing his clothes, and most daunting, administering morphine and other sedatives to treat his pain and anxiety. The main problem was funding. All right, so a family of doctors who reads and now contributes to the New York Times. So communists, probably middle upper class, if not upper class economically, a family of doctors, is decrying how, the old man, he was ready to check out and I didn't want to be bothered. So I signed him up for hospice. And they expected me to care for my own ailing father. Can you believe it? I mean, I had to help get him dressed. I had to help bathe him. Ugh, that's gross. This is a doctor. This is somebody who, do no harm. Bedside manner is actually part of their training, but couldn't even. Ugh, disgusting. The prospect of taking care of the person who wiped your butt growing up, taught you how to brush your teeth, how to shave, maybe threw catch with you in the backyard. Well, I mean, you're a New York Times reader, so you probably throw like a girl, but you get where I'm coming from. He powdered your butt, and you can't even help him when he's afflicted with a life-ending disease? What's the matter with you? Well, the problem here that's identified by this opinion piece, by this doctor, is we just need more government funding for hospice. We have to up that so he won't be bothered as much. He can go about his regular business. And he tries to say, we managed multiple siblings, kind of traded off, but it really was a burden we shouldn't have had to deal with. And then the other element of it is he says that 3/4 of hospice care facilities are private entities. They're motivated by profit. So that's a problem. They're going to cut corners, right? Really? Really? They're going to do a crummy job, and the family's going to go out and talk about how this private care facility did an awful job with their loved one in their final moments, which would kill their business. So he's against private entities. He's all for government-funded entities, though, because I'm sure a government worker, a DMV worker who is now doing hospice care, they're going to do just wonders for your ailing father. But, you don't have to worry about it. Out of sight, out of mind. And as long as we're talking about how were they characterized back in 2020? Healthcare heroes. Is this the ilk of people who we can get along with? So back to NPR for our next piece. And this is all about the nurses who are running to Canada. Headlines: Hundreds of American nurses choose Canada over the US under Trump because he's mean, orange, and literally Hitler. So our launch off point is with a married couple, family of 3, Justin and Amy. They moved to Canada from Wisconsin. Another one from California. Her name is Brandy. Just couldn't even take it. Many nurses have felt the draw of Canada's progressive politics, friendly reputation, and universal healthcare system. So I say, good riddance. Leave. Now, the concern is that this is going to create a shortage of nurses, that so many who have matriculated through our healthcare system are favoring government-funded healthcare in Canada. They want the communist politics. They want the government to come in and take all of your money, and that would be so much better. I don't think that's a problem. I think that's addition by subtraction. They were weighed, measured, and found wanting 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when they were called healthcare heroes, when they purposefully put people on respirators, when they told people who were struggling, hey, go home and then just call us if you're about to die. Don't you dare take that horse paste, which won a Nobel Prize. It's dangerous for you. Should we trust the media that took pictures of Joe Rogan when he got COVID and then overcame it when they tried to make his skin look green? These are the ilk that were out there doing that. These media sources that had the up to the minute death trackers going for deaths from coronavirus, when we know that those facts and figures, that data is months in arrear, if not years in arrear. But they were doing a tracker like it was on the New York Stock Exchange. But to the nurses, they're really mega Doppler MAGA upset with the Donald Trump administration. And look, I'm not a big fan, but one of the good things that they did with the student loans, good, parsing my words, better than it could have been, but they should have done away entirely with student loans. But one of the things they did with the federal student loans for nursing was they changed the designation to limit the amount of money we're on the hook for funding these people going to nursing school. And they're upset about that. So those communist nurses are leaving the country and they're going to Canada. Do you think you're going to get great quality of care from those communists? Do you think if you walked into a hospital right now and you saw just regular personnel walking around with masks, it's the communist version of the MAGA hat. Tell me your politics without telling me your politics. Do you think that those individuals are going to have great bedside manner? Or do you think that they're going to, just they'll get to you when they get to you? They're going to make sure that they give care to other people who agree with their perspectives. I mean, did you get your booster shot? Oh, you didn't? Oh, I might be ignoring that call for help for an hour or 3. Okay, now let's go to something completely different. Let's talk about some charities. Now, this is an opinion piece from the Washington Post because democracy dies in darkness. And I gave it a read. Some of the things in here I thought were a little bit interesting. Some of them I kind of rolled my eyes at, but then I did my verifying and dismissed it whole cloth because that's what we like to do here. We like to investigate and find out what the heck is going on. So the title of the piece is The $2.8 trillion Tax Shelter Hiding in Plain Sight. Now, this piece is all about how we need to start taxing charities. Not all charities, but as they're characterized like business-like charities. And there are some examples in here. So this guy, what is his name? Scott Hodge. Scott Hodge wrote it. So he points out that right now and into the foreseeable future, because we have a government that is way too big and spends way too much money, it doesn't pay attention to the charges in our pesky, dusty documents, but instead it just does all the other things, the things that it imagines are in a good and plenty clause, an invisible ink on the back of the Declaration of Independence. And because of that, because providing for the general welfare is Obama phones and not protecting the border, we have a $2 trillion deficit. That means the government spends $2 trillion more than it anticipates taking in. It's probably worse than that. $2 trillion. Well, how do you bridge that gap? Well, I would say you stop spending the money, but this is the Washington Post, so they're not going to encourage that. Instead, he wants to go after charities out there. So one option, he says, is to generate substantial revenue while making the tax system fair is to end tax exemption status for massive nonprofit business sector. That would be nonprofit hospitals, which I don't know. Aren't they supposed to provide for the needy? Do they do that? He throws out like AARP, and that's a communist organization. I don't really mind that. Some sports leagues out there like the PGA Tour, professional golf is a nonprofit. That's insane. I don't understand that. I could maybe get on board for that. And then the Academy of Motion Pictures. So let's tax the heck out of those communist actors. Okay. All right. I'm starting to verify. I'm thinking like, all right, this guy's onto something. And he says that if we did that, we would be able to take theoretically in as a government, we would be able to steal, tax about $50 billion in revenue, taxes stolen. We have a $2 trillion deficit. So that would be like 2.5%. So really not clawing back very much against it. Certainly not doing as well as you would if you just eliminated a lot of spending, but that's what his position was. But then I started thinking about this guy. I was like, what's his background? Scott Hodge. And they let you know at the bottom of the piece that he's associated with Arnold Ventures. Arnold Ventures. I don't know it. Let me find out what his bona fides are. Who is this guy? What's this organization he's from? So I verified. And I got a couple of sections of the Arnold Ventures website. Shocker, it's a nonprofit. Interestingly enough, this jerk did not insist that his own organization get taxed. So they talk about Arnold Ventures is a philanthropy group, maximizing opportunity, minimizing injustice. Injustice, that's a code word. That's a code word for communism. So what kind of communism is Arnold Ventures all about? Well, here's a couple of examples. Let's go to criminal justice, where they want to let the bad guys out of jail because of racism. We can go to healthcare. And they argue that contraceptives, choice, and access, they want to murder all the babies because of fairness and justice. And then we can go to drug prices, where they want the government to subsidize big pharma, just like they do in Canada. So I guess all those nurses will come back, right? Another one, we've got infrastructure, lots of government work programs, right? Like the stimulus, like the Obama $787 billion program that he came in his first year. We just need to build all the roads and bridges with tax dollars that are, I guess, stolen or taxed. But if we tax some charities, then we could afford way more bridges and roads and government subsidize abortions. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Thank you very much, Arnold Ventures. Oh, and I said that they were a philanthropy group, a nonprofit, which means that it's publicly available to find out what sort of resources are at their disposal. And again, you're nonprofit, but there's nothing stopping you from paying more in taxes. I mean, we're in tax season right now. You send your 1099s, your W-2s, all your other stuff off to your accountant, and he's going to try to minimize what you owe to Uncle Sam, right? You can pay more. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. In fact, might actually be a good thing if the IRS put a section on there like, do you want to pay more? I mean, where would you like it to go? I mean, maybe allow people to contribute to it if they wanted. I mean, I certainly don't. I don't like big government, but communists who write and contribute over the Washington Post that work for philanthropy groups, they should feel just perfectly fine because they believe that the government is the best use of their dollars. Just pay more. Well, how much does the Arnold Ventures philanthropy nonprofit, which I think it's actually called Laura and John Arnold Foundation, that's the actual umbrella organization, how much are they worth? So the most recent tax document I got access to was from a 2023 Form 990. And I scrolled through it, and I won't make you guys look at it too long, but they brought in $972 million in 2023. They brought in just shy of $1 billion. Oh, and their total assets on hand, $4.3 billion. Honestly, looks like business is pretty good if you're a communist nonprofit. It's almost like the Hodges of the world, the Scott Hodges. They purposefully excluded their efforts out there because they're doing so much good advocacy on behalf of what their perspectives are. It would be a shame if anybody verified who they were, what they were representing. Oh, then they might be on the hook for paying their fair share. And sort of in that lane, let's talk about something else when it comes to government and to initiatives and verifying what's going on. So I saw this piece. It's in multiple locations. I found it from greatamericanpatriot.com, and it's a review of a California DOGE, like the Department of Government Efficiency, just did an investigation into some solar panel stuff going on in California and found out what sort of shenanigans were going on. So headline here is California DOGE investigation reveals $1 billion California solar programs funds voter Mobilization Network. Now, they went way into the weeds on this one, and I am not going to do that for you. That is not our purposes today. But what you should know is that there is this group, California Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing, SOMAH, SOMAH. And they basically got $100 million a year for 10 years to cut electricity bills for poor people in California by putting a whole bunch of solar panels out there. So $100 million every single year for 10 years. That's $1 billion. Now, this California DOGE initiative did this investigation. They found that out of the $1 billion, only 72 million went towards solar panels. Where did the other money go? That's over $900 million, $928 million unaccounted for? No, it went back to a group that had oversight of this SOMAH, and it's another acronym, don't worry about it. Another group that advocated for this SOMAH group because they wanted to give that cheap electricity to the poor people of California. They had oversight of it. They had control of the coffers. And then they stood up a nonprofit arm that really managed it. Nonprofit, And they took over $900 million and gave it to communist candidates for office in California. Get out the vote efforts, endorsing candidates in the dozens, putting out mailers and commercials, getting candidates on TV for their own political needs, their own political ends. And this wasn't verified for a decade. So for a decade, the taxpayers in California and the communist enclave, the People's Republic of California, they've been giving $1 billion to get out the vote for other people to tax them and spend their money so that they can get their friends elected. It's like a giant circle. And part of it's been through a nonprofit initiative. You got to always verify where those donations are going. You always do. Trust, but verify. All right, so let's talk about, I got a video queued up here. We're talking about Cold Civil War and how the sides have become increasingly tribal and how they can't seem to get along. And what is the big issue? What is the big one that we just can't agree on? Illegal immigration, right? People who are conservative, not the libertarians, they want open borders, but conservative, believe in the pesky, dusty document that says that we're supposed to secure our borders and we expect the government to maintain our sovereignty, to eject people who violate our border sovereignty because it's in the documents. Like that's one of the few charges that we expect. They can't get along with the communists because those folks want millions and millions of people to come in here, suck on and drain the government. So we have to give them more welfare. We get them, and then we give them the vote so that we can continue to elect more communists like they do in California. But it hasn't always been like that. So I've got this video queued up, a couple of states of the union, a compare and contrast between the recent State of the Union from Donald Trump, which, we didn't really weigh in. It's just a giant pep rally. I'm not really interested in it. I actually watch wrestling reruns with my son because it's far better KFOB. And I contrast it with probably a politician who he's most closely aligned with. That would be Bill Clinton. So it's a little bit long. It's just under 2 minutes. Compare and contrast State of the Unions between Donald Trump and Bill Clinton.
Agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes, to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace as recommended by the commission headed by former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan.
Okay. Huh. Bill Clinton sounds to the right of Donald Trump on this, getting hyper aggressive on illegal aliens. He was a Democrat. He was a far left Democrat in the 1990s. That's just how far the cold Civil War has drifted, how far the conversation and the debate has shifted in favor of the communist left. That guy, Bill Clinton, that creep, sounded pretty presidential to me. Sounded like he was actually fulfilling the charge that was that in that pesky, dusty document that he swore an oath to. Huh. But who are our heroes today? Who are the people or who are the organizations that we should lean on? And should we maybe vet them? So that was a State of the Union address we just showed from Donald Trump, Bill Clinton. Recently, there was a State of the Union from the auto pen Biden administration. And then there's always the response, right? You've got if the Democrats are in power, then the Republicans got to select their person to do it. And a couple years ago, it was an Alabama senator named Katie Britt. She was the mom sitting in her kitchen with a really ridiculous Nikki Haley teeth smile. And it was really off-putting and disturbing. But if you get that primetime slot, you are basically the rising star in your party. You're viewed as somebody who they want to project into the future as being a potential leader. And that was Katie Britt. Well, if she was pushing back on the Biden administration, you would think she was mega Doppler in favor of illegal alien deportations, right? Well, not so, not quite. And we should verify that, right? So we got a puff piece over from NPR, of all places, on Katie Britt. And why would they be doing that? Well, because she's not the firebrand that she was billed to be. But don't take my word for it. Take NPR's word for it. Britt is helping negotiate changes to how immigration agents operate after the deadly shootings of 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis. For Britt, it was the viral image of a 5-year-old boy in a bunny hat and a Spider-Man backpack being detained by federal officers there that she could not shake. The 5-year-old, you mean, whose dad ran away because he was an illegal alien? And then the ICE officers or other members of the task force had to take care of the 5-year-old because they couldn't just leave a 5-year-old out on the street in the middle of winter in Minneapolis. So she hasn't even vetted the facts and circumstances of the case. And now she's just going to jump on in and recreate and rethink the way that law enforcement is done in an immigration context. And what is her expertise on that to begin with, other than just having a heavy case of the feels? Who is Katie Britt? I mean, does she come from law enforcement? Did she work on immigration matters? No. She just went to college and then went to work as an aide for the senator from Alabama. And then she just stayed with him long enough to become his chief of staff. And then when he retired, she just jumped right into that seat, right? That's who the hero of the Republic is. That's the person that we should trust to bridge the gap, bridge the divide between the R's and the D's. We couldn't lean on like a Bill Clinton. Man, look what he said in the past, and that makes too much sense. We need to have Katie Britt out there who knows nothing and, in fact, doesn't even look at the basic facts surrounding any case and just takes the communist news headlines word for it, right? Because we saw that from the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness, and the New York Times, at one point a newspaper, and CNN, ABC, NBC, they all published that picture of that kid. Wasn't true, but gave her a case of the feels. And now she's out there leading the negotiations to rethink the way that we deport illegal aliens. Now, that's one individual. Let's close it out today with a conversation about an institution and decrying the institution. We're back to the idea, the cold Civil War, the possible breakup, the possible divorce that could be on over the horizon. Now, one side is saying, we got to come together. Who is that side saying that? Well, it's the side that's endorsing Katie Britt, who's going to give them everything they want, right? The leftist communists that are just dropping the radical pose to get to the radical ends where they can get the worst people into power. Now, as an institution, where are they arguing for? Where are they going to best manipulate you if you happen to be on the conservative side of things? And not even just right, left. If you just want the government to do its darn job and not do anything else, how are they going to persuade you? Well, we have this thing called a God gap in the country. It's a political thing. It basically means Republicans are Christian and atheists are Democrats. That's sort of where we're at. And there's all these exit polls that kind of substantiate it. And there was an opinion piece that I saw over at the, where is it? Washington Post, where this individual is arguing that America needs to moderate, but not politically. I mean, not doing the Bill Clinton triangulation thing. No, we need to moderate something way more important, like our churches, which I believe have pretty clear lines about the way things should operate. But what do I know? Let's verify what this guy says. He is, after all, a former pastor. Headline: America needs moderate churches. So we talked about the God gap. He mentions it. He says, now we're left with right-wing evangelicals and left-wing atheists yelling at each other. The decline of moderate congregations is not only hurting American religion, it is also hurting American democracy. Democracy, code for things we like if you're on the communist left in this country. And this guy has cloaked himself figuratively in pastoral garb in order to argue that, you shouldn't really take a harsh stance on anything. I think that there's an entire book that has very harsh stances on stuff that you theoretically were preaching from the pulpit about, Pastor. But why would that matter? We can always just shade around the edges. We can cultivate theology around what our politics are. That's what the communists do, because the communists view their politics as religion, and that is actually why we're in an irreconcilable difference. That's why we have a cold civil war, because the Borg from Star Trek, the communists that say that which not is banned is required, you will be assimilated, resistance is futile. This is a holy war for them. No matter where you are on the politics as being important to you, if you are on the political right, if you're a conservative, if you're a libertarian, it is nowhere close to the importance that the communists have for it. It's their religion. There is nothing beyond this point. They have to create utopia on earth, a communist utopia, because at the end, it all just fades to black. You cannot match their passion. But you should also be aware of their cunning. You have to trust, but verify if you're interested in even reconciling here. And I'm not particularly interested, and I'm not sure if anybody in the AMRAD pod is. But if you want to avoid the cold civil war from going kinetic, we're going to have to get to some sort of mutually assured destruction or a peaceable arrangement, some sort of resolution here to avoid bloodshed. And that's going to require a modicum of conversation, maybe a modicum of compromise, but not on your values. Maybe some policies, but at the very least, before you take up any sort of consideration that you're going to make a deal with these guys, you have to verify them, because they're playing with you. They're out there saying, we can just amend our tax code and tax some nonprofit charities out there, the ones that are advocating pro-life ideology, but at the same time, our $4 billion that we have in the war chest to get out the vote or to push for jailbreak of violators of our laws or murder on demand for babies in the womb. We are going to be free of getting our income taxed, right? You should really trust this Republican. She's the one. She's the one that can bridge the gap. Meanwhile, she knows nothing, and she's just going along to get along. Trust but verify, because we got some healthy trust issues. And speaking of trust issues, that could take us to our palate cleanse for the day. And this is what happens when you have two individuals who are sharing a beverage together and they're used to poisoning their enemies. What happens when they actually have to drink together? I know it's not real, guys. It's funny, though. All right. That will do it for today on the American Radicals podcast. If you haven't already, just do all those things: like, share, subscribe, follow, leave the comments. And again, appeal to you. Head on over to Spotify at one point this week. Listen to at least one episode. Let's see if we can't get that thing monetized. We'll plan to be back with you tomorrow, noontime. And until then, have a great day.
You've been listening to the American Radicals podcast. Find us on YouTube, Rumble, and X at AmRadPod.